I cut my own mother's headstone. I want to start there because it tells you what kind of man I am and what kind of man my brother is better than anything else I could say. I'm a stonemason, have been for 38 years, same as our father was. So when Mum passed this spring, after the long, slow years of me feeding her and washing her and sitting with her while she forgot my name and then forgot her own, there was never any question who'd cut her stone. I did it myself, in the yard, over 3 weeks, and I got the lettering exact, and I set it with my own hands in the cemetery on the hill where 4 generations of us are buried. My brother Jerry flew in for the funeral, stood at the front in a coat that cost more than I make in 2 months, shook a lot of hands, told a lot of people how hard it had been losing Mum. And then, 3 days later, at the solicitor's office, my brother looked me in the eye and tried to take the last thing our mother had left, the same way he'd taken the first thing nearly 40 years ago, when he thought I was too young and too stupid to understand what he'd done. He was wrong about that then. He was wrong about it now. But this isn't the story you think it is, because I found something clearing out Mum's house, in her handwriting, and what I found, and what my brother told me the following Sunday, standing in the kitchen we grew up in, changed everything I thought I understood about him, about our family, and about the near 40 years I'd spent being right. I'm going to tell you about a betrayal, and I'm going to tell you about the day I finally had everything I needed to prove I was right, and discovered that being right wasn't the thing I needed at all. Let me tell you who I am, and who Jerry is, and who our mother turned out to be. My name is Sam Hollis. I'm 56 years old, and I've spent my whole life in the same town I was born in, which is a thing you're supposed to be a little ashamed of these days, and I'm not. I'm a stonemason. My father taught me, in the yard behind our house, from the time I was big enough to hold a chisel. And I'll tell you what stone teaches a man, because it's most of how I see the world. Stone is honest. Stone doesn't care how you feel about it. You can't rush it, you can't fake it, and every mistake you make in it is permanent, right there in the surface for everyone to see for 100 years. You learn to be careful with a thing that doesn't forgive. You learn that what you cut, you're stuck with. Measure it 10 times because you only get to cut it once. I think about that a lot now, about the things we cut into each other that can't be sanded out. There were 2 of us, Jerry and me. Jerry's the older one, 3 years up on me, and growing up he was everything I wasn't. Quick where I was slow, charming where I was quiet, always looking at the horizon while I was looking at my hands. Our parents adored him. I don't say that with bitterness, or I'm trying not to, because it was true and it was fair, in a way. Jerry shone. Jerry was going somewhere. And in a small town where most people go nowhere, a boy who's going somewhere is a kind of miracle, and our mom and dad held him up like one. Me, I stayed. I learned the trade. And Jerry, at 22, took the money and went to the city to make something of himself. I need to tell you about the money, because it's the whole beginning of this, and I've carried it the better part of 40 years. When Jerry was 22, he had a chance, a business opportunity, a partnership, something that needed capital to get into, and our parents didn't have capital. What they had was a small piece of land out past the edge of town, 12 acres, that had been in our family for generations. It wasn't worth a fortune, but it was worth something, and it was meant, Dad always said, to be split between his 2 boys one day. Our security, both of ours. Jerry needed money for his opportunity, and so our parents sold the land, all 12 acres, and they gave the money to Jerry to get him started. Now, I was 19, and I was told, we were all told, that it was a loan, that Jerry would pay it back, and that when he did, my half would be there for me, and everything would be square. And I believed it, because you believe your family. Jerry took the money, and he went to the city, and the business did well, And then it did very well, and Jerry became exactly the success everyone always knew he'd be. And the money never came back. Not the first year, when things were tight for him, which I understood. Not the 5th year. Not the 10th, when he bought his first big house, or the 15th, when he bought the second one. I watched my brother get rich on the sale of land that was supposed to be half mine, and I watched him never once mention it. And when I finally worked up the nerve to bring it up, gently, at a Christmas maybe 15 years ago, Jerry looked at me like I'd tracked mud on his carpet and said, "Sam, that was Mom and Dad's money to give. If they wanted to help me get started, that's between me and them. Don't be small about it." Don't be small about it. So I never brought it up again. What was I going to do? Sue my own brother? Drag our parents into it while they were still alive and still proud of him? No, I swallowed it. I stayed in the town and I ran the yard, and I looked after Mom and Dad as they got old, because someone had to, and Jerry was busy being the success we'd all sold the land for. Dad went first, 8 years ago. And then it was just Mom, and then Mom started to go, in her mind, in the long, slow way, and for the last 4 years of her life, I was the one. Every day. The feeding, the washing, the sitting up at night when she was frightened and didn't know where she was. Jerry sent money for her care, I'll give him that. He was generous with money. Money was always the easy thing for Jerry. But money doesn't sit with a frightened woman at 3 a.m. I did that. 4 years of it. And Jerry visited twice a year, and each time he'd breeze in for an afternoon, and Mom's whole face would light up like the sun had come out. "Jerry's home! Jerry's here!" And he'd sit with her for 2 hours, and then fly back to his life. And she'd talk about that visit for a month. And I'd be there the other 363 days, the one she'd snap at, the one she'd forget. Because that's what happens. The one who's always there becomes furniture. The one who visits is a holiday. I made my peace with all of it, or I told myself I had. Right up until this spring, when Mom died, and I cut her stone, and we all went to the solicitor's office to hear her will, and my brother tried to take the last thing. Let me tell you what happened in that office. The solicitor was a woman named Mrs. Fenwick, who'd done our family's business for years, and had a way of speaking softly that made you sit up straighter. Jerry and I sat on the 2 chairs in front of her desk, not quite looking at each other, the way you don't when there's 40 years in the room with you. Mom's estate was simple enough. There wasn't much. The house, the one we'd grown up in, that I'd been living in the last 4 years while I cared for her, a little bit of savings, some furniture, some photographs, the ordinary sediment of a long and ordinary life. Mrs. Fenwick started to read the will, and I want to tell you, I wasn't there for money. I was there to hear my mother's last wishes and honor them, that's all. The will was old, made years ago when both our parents were still sharp, and it split everything down the middle, half to Jerry, half to me. The house, the savings, all of it, straight down the middle, equal. And I watched my brother's face when he heard the house to be divided equally, and I saw him do a thing I'd seen him do my whole life. I saw him start to calculate. "Now," Jerry said before Mrs. Fenwick had even finished, "there's a practical matter here. The house should be sold, obviously, and the proceeds split. I've already had a couple of agents give me informal valuations, and I think if we move quickly—" "I live there, Jerry," I said. "Well, yes, temporarily, but that was for Mom's care, and Mom's—" He stopped himself short of the word. "The situation's changed now. It doesn't make sense for you to be rattling around in a 4-bedroom house on your own. Financially, it's the obvious thing. We sell, we split it, everyone moves on." Everyone moves on. Into a house I'd cut the stone for the woman who died in the front bedroom. I kept my voice level. 38 years of working stone teaches you to keep your hands steady when it matters. The house is half mine, I said. The will says so. I'm not looking to sell it. I'm living in it. If you want your half of its value, we can work something out. I can pay you out over time, but I'm not selling our mother's house 3 weeks after she died so you can have the cash quicker. And that's when Jerry said the thing. He said, "Sam, let's be honest with each other for once. You've been living rent-free in that house for 4 years. You've had the benefit of it. And frankly, given everything Mom and Dad put into helping me get established, and what I've contributed to this family financially over the years, I'd have thought a clean 50-50 on the house is more than fair to you. I could make an argument I'm owed more." I owed more. He said it in a solicitor's office 3 weeks after our mother died with a straight face. That the land they sold to make him rich and the money he sent for Mom's care instead of showing up for it added up to him being owed more. I didn't shout. I've told you that's not who I am, and a shout would have been for me, not for the truth of it. I just looked at my brother for a long moment, and I felt something I hadn't felt in all the years of swallowing this. Not anger, exactly, something clearer. I felt done pretending we were something we weren't. I said, "All right, Jerry, if we're being honest with each other for once, let's do that. But not here, and not today. I'm going to finish clearing out Mom's house this week. You come by Sunday before you fly back. Just the two of us, in the house, and we'll have the honest conversation you say you want. All of it. Near 40 years of it." Something flickered behind his eyes. Jerry's good at rooms, and he could feel he'd overplayed something, though he didn't know what. He agreed. Sunday. And he stood up and buttoned that expensive coat and said something to Mrs. Fenwick about being in touch, and he left, and I sat there another minute in that quiet office. Mrs. Fenwick looked at me, not unkindly, and she said, "There's one more thing. Some months ago your mother left a letter with me, addressed to you, with instructions that I give it to you privately after the will was read." She slid it across the desk. "She was very clear it was for you, Sam." My name, in my mother's handwriting, on the front of an envelope. A handwriting that had gone shaky at the end, but was firm here, from before, from when she still knew things. I didn't open it there. I put it in my coat next to my heart, and I drove back to the house I grew up in, and I sat at the kitchen table where she used to sit, and I looked at that envelope for a long time before I had the courage to open it. Let me tell you what my mother wrote. I'd been clearing the house for a week by then, room by room, the slow archaeology of a life. And in the bottom of Mom's wardrobe, under the good shoes she never wore anymore, I found a shoebox. And in the shoebox was the truth about the land. Because my parents had kept everything too. There was the original paperwork from the sale of the 12 acres. And clipped to it, in my father's hand, a note of the exact amount they'd given Jerry. And then, behind that, something I never knew existed. A little book, and in it, in Dad's writing, and then Mom's after he passed, a record. Every time over the years they'd raised the money with Jerry, and every time he'd put them off. Dated, 1 line each. The better part of 40 years of my parents quietly waiting for my brother to make it right, and quietly noting that he never did. They knew. That's what hit me, sitting on the floor of that wardrobe. All those years I thought I was the only one who saw it, the only one carrying it. They knew the whole time. They just never said. because saying it would have meant choosing between their boys out loud, and they couldn't bear to. And then I opened the letter. I'm not going to read you all of it. Some of it's just mine. But I'll read you the part that matters. She wrote, "My darling Sam, if you're reading this, then you're the one who stayed till the end. I always knew you would be. And I have some things to say that I was too much of a coward to say to your face. I know about the land. I know it was never fair. Your father and I made a decision when you boys were young, and then we spent the rest of our lives not putting it right. Because putting it right meant admitting we'd got it wrong. And we were proud, and we were frightened, and we told ourselves it would sort itself out. It never did, and you paid for it. You paid for it every single day, and you never once made us feel it. And that is the great kindness of my life, that you let two old people who wronged you keep their pride until the end. I don't have a clever explanation for your brother. I've turned it over 1,000 times, and I can't give you one that would satisfy you, because I don't think I ever fully understood him myself. We didn't raise you two the same, I know that now. We put something on Jerry that we never put on you, and I've wondered, late at night, whether it cost him something we never saw. But I'm guessing, and you deserve better than my guesses. If you ever want to understand your brother, you'll have to get it from him, not from me. I'm sorry I can't hand it to you. I've left you enough to carry. Here is the one thing I do know, and I've earned the right to say it, because I got it wrong for 50 years. Being right about someone will keep you warm for one night, Sam. It will not keep you company for the rest of your life. Your father and I kept a little book of everything Jerry didn't do, and all it ever bought us was a colder house. Don't inherit that book. It's the worst thing we own. You're 56. You could have 30 more years. I'm begging you not to spend them the way we spent ours. I'm sorry, my darling, for all of it. You were the best of us, and we let you carry the most, and we never said thank you. So I'm saying it now. Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Mum. I sat on the floor of my mother's bedroom with that letter, and I cried the way you cry when something you've held tight for the better part of 40 years finally has to be set down. But I'll be honest with you, because I've been honest all the way through. Underneath the crying, there was something else, and it wasn't all soft. Because here's what I actually felt once the crying stopped, sitting on that floor. I felt angry, not at Jerry for once, at her, even now, even dead, even in the last letter she'd ever write me, my mother was asking me to be the bigger man, again. Nearly 40 years I'd been the bigger man. Nearly 40 years I'd been the one who stayed, the one who swallowed it, the one who kept the peace so nobody had to feel bad. And her final act, her deathbed request, the very last thing she'd ever ask of me was, "Do it one more time, Sam. Be bigger one more time. Let it go one more time." When was it going to be my turn to just be right, to not be the reasonable one? I'd earned that. If anybody on this earth had earned the right to lay near 40 years of proof on a table and watch his brother squirm, it was me, and I had it. It was sitting in a shoebox in the next room, and Jerry was coming Sunday. I want to tell you I read that letter and became a wise and gentle man on the spot. I didn't. For 4 days I went back and forth like a man arguing with himself in an empty house, which is exactly what I was. Some hours I was going to do it. I'd lay out the shoebox, the land paperwork, the little book, near 40 years of dates in our parents' handwriting, and I'd make Jerry sit there and read every line, and I'd say the thing I'd swallowed at that Christmas 15 years ago and every Christmas since. Don't be small about it. I'd give it back to him with interest, and he'd have no coat to hide behind, and no room to charm, and no way out. And for once, for one time in my life, I'd win. I'd rehearse it in the shower. I'd rehearse it lying awake. It felt wonderful. It felt like justice. And other hours, usually the small ones, 3 and 4 in the morning, the hours I knew so well from sitting up with Mum, I'd think about what winning would actually leave me with. I'd be right. I'd be completely, thoroughly, documented in 2 generations of handwriting, right. And I'd be alone in a 4-bedroom house, the way our parents had been right and alone in it before me. My mother was warning me about a specific house, and I was already living in it. I went up the hill once in those 4 days, stood at Mum's stone, the one I cut, didn't say anything clever, just stood there. And I understood that she couldn't decide this for me. That was the thing about the letter, in the end. She could ask, but she couldn't choose it for me. Because a mercy your mother orders you to perform isn't mercy, it's just obedience. And I was too old to be obedient and too tired to be right. Whatever I did on Sunday was going to have to be mine. By Saturday night, I still didn't know which brother was going to open the door on Sunday, the one holding the shoebox like a weapon, or the one who'd finally set it down. I went to bed not knowing. I'm not sure I decided even then. I think I decided in the room, with him in front of me. Let me tell you about Sunday. Jerry came at 11. I watched him get out of the hire car and stand for a second looking up at the house, and I wondered if he saw what I saw, a lifetime of both of us in those walls, or whether he just saw a valuation. Maybe both. I've stopped believing people are only one thing. He came in ready for a fight, folder under his arm, and he sat at our mother's kitchen table and started right in, brisk, the voice he uses to win. Right. I've been thinking about the house, and I want to be reasonable, so I've had someone put together— Jerry, stop. Before you do the numbers, I want to show you something. And I put the shoebox on the table. I took out the land paperwork and set it in front of him. Then the little book, our parents' near 40 years of asking and him not answering, and I set that in front of him too, and I told him what it was. And I watched my brother go very still. But he didn't crumble. That's not who Jerry is either. He looked at that book, and his jaw set, and the old defensiveness came up like a shield. "So that's what this is," he said. "You've been sitting on a little file, waiting, all these years, and you kept a file." It was a gift, Sam. How many times? Mom and Dad gave me that money to get started, and I made something of it, which is what they wanted. And now they're not even cold, and you've got the receipts out. "It wasn't a gift," I said. "It was a loan. Everybody in this family knew it was a loan. It's in Dad's own writing that it was a loan. It was—" He stopped, and something happened in his face that I hadn't planned on and couldn't have planned on, because I didn't know what was underneath it. The shield came down, not because I'd knocked it down, but because he was tired of holding it. He was 59 years old, and he'd been holding it a long time. "You want the truth?" he said, and his voice was different now. "The real one? Not the one of the Christmas table. The real one." I said I did. The business nearly went under in the first 3 years. You don't know that because nobody knew that, because I made sure nobody knew that. He was looking at the table, not at me. Everyone back here thought I'd gone off and become a success overnight. Golden Jerry. And the truth is, I spent 3 years about a month from losing everything, drowning, and too ashamed to say a word to anybody because you'd all sold the land on me. Mom and Dad sold 12 acres, our security, both of ours, you're right, betting on me, and I was about to lose it. And how do you come home and say that? How do you look at Dad and say the land's gone and I've got nothing to show for it? I didn't say anything. I hadn't known any of this. All these years, and I hadn't known. There was one time, he said, early, worst of it. I came home and I meant to tell Dad. I meant to say, I might lose it, and I owe you, and I don't know how I'll ever pay it back. I actually meant to say it. And I got about half a sentence out about the money, and Dad put his hand up, and he said, "Forget the money, son. Just make something of it." And he changed the subject. He didn't want to hear it. His golden boy, struggling, needing to talk about a debt. He couldn't stand it, so he waved it off. Jerry looked up at me then. And Sam, I have spent the better part of 40 years telling myself that was permission. That Dad said, forget the money, so the money was forgotten, so I was square. I built a whole life on that one sentence. He shook his head slowly. But I knew, even then, walking out of here that day, I knew he didn't mean forget it forever. He meant he couldn't bear to talk about it that afternoon, a father's pride. He still expected me to make it right when I could. And I could have, 10 times over, across 30-odd years. I just kept holding on to forget the money because it let me off. It was easier to be the success who'd been given a gift than the son who owed a debt he was too ashamed to have nearly failed at. So I never came home, because home was where the debt was, and the longer I stayed away, the truer my version got, until I said it to you at that Christmas, and I actually believed it. Don't be small about it. God! I'm sorry, Sam. And I sat there with all my proof spread out on the table, the thing I'd waited the better part of 40 years for, and I understood something the letter hadn't told me, because Mum hadn't known it either. He'd been a frightened young man, and then he'd spent a lifetime hardening the fright into a story he could live inside. That didn't make it right. He still had 30 years he could have made it right, and didn't. He'd still tried to take the house 3 days ago. Understanding a thing is not the same as excusing it, and I never once confused the two. But it did something to the shoebox. It made it lighter somehow, sitting there, because I'd built my near 40 years on a story too, and mine turned out about as true as his. He hadn't stayed away because he didn't love us. He'd stayed away because he couldn't face us. I'd spent my whole adult life mistaking the one for the other. "So this is where you tell me what I owe," Jerry said, echoing the shape of the whole afternoon. And that was the moment. That was my 4 days coming to a point. I had the ledger. I had the proof. I had the right, more right than any man ever had, to make my brother pay, in guilt, if not in pounds. My mother had asked me not to, but my mother couldn't make me, and Jerry, sitting there braced for it, half expected it and would have taken it because he thought he had it coming. And I found I didn't want it. Not because I was ordered to be gentle, because I looked at the two of us, 2 men in our 50s at our dead mother's table, each of us having spent near 40 years being right about the other and each of us wrong, and I thought, I could win this. And winning it costs me the only person left alive who remembers being a boy in this house with me. That's the price of the ledger. And I don't want to pay it. Not for the pleasure of watching him squirm. It isn't worth what it costs. Nothing my mother wrote made me feel that. Jerry sitting there telling me the truth for the first time in near 40 years is what made me feel it. So I put my hand flat on the little book, our parents' lifetime of waiting, and I closed it. I'm not going to give you a number, Jerry, I said. That's what you're braced for, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not keeping this book. Mom and Dad kept it their whole lives, and it bought them a cold house, and I've kept my own version of it in my head since I was 19, and I'm done carrying it. Keep the money. It's near 40 years gone anyway, and I never really wanted the money. I looked at him. I wanted my brother to have been fair to me, and he wasn't, and he can't go back and be. That part doesn't get undone. I'm just not going to spend the rest of my life collecting on it. Jerry was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "The house is yours. All of it. My half, however you want to paper it, it's yours. I should never have." In the solicitor's office 3 days after, I don't know what's wrong with me. He put his hand over his eyes. I've got more money than I'll ever spend, and I came here to take half of a house off the brother who buried our mother. What is wrong with me? I don't know, Jerry, I said. Maybe money's just where you go when you don't know what else to do. It wasn't cruel, the way I said it. I wasn't sure I had him figured out at all. I was only starting to. It's all right. Put your hand down. We'll sort the house with one form. It's all right. I made him a cup of tea, because in this family that's what you do when someone's undone at the table. You make them a cup of tea. And while the kettle boiled, I said, "You want to do something for me? Not money. Come up the hill. You haven't seen the stone I cut for her." So that's how it ended. Not with a settlement. 2 brothers in their 50s driving up the hill to the cemetery where 4 generations of us are buried, and standing together in front of a headstone I'd cut with my own hands, our mother's name on it, and the dates, and underneath, 2 words I'd chosen weeks before, without fully knowing why I'd chosen them. She kept us. Jerry read it, and he didn't say anything because there wasn't anything to say. And my brother put his hand on the top of that stone, the way you'd put your hand on a shoulder, and we stood there, the 2 of us, not talking, for a long time. A near lifetime of not knowing how to be brothers, and we didn't fix it standing on that hill. You don't fix near 40 years in an afternoon. But we started, and we're both still young enough that starting might be enough. He comes back now, more than twice a year. Last month he came for no reason at all, no funeral, no business, just came, and we didn't do much. He sat in the yard and watched me work a piece of stone, the way he used to when we were boys, before he'd gone anywhere, before either of us had become the man who was so sure he was right about the other. I cut stone for a living, so I know better than most that some things, once you carve them, you're stuck with. But I had near 40 years cut into me, and it turns out those you can still change if you're willing to want the brother more than you want the proof. I had all the proof in the world sitting in a shoebox. I just stopped needing to win with it. Because Jerry is the last person alive who remembers our mother's kitchen when she was in it. I'm Sam Hollis. Thank you for sitting with me tonight. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and come back next time. The porch light's always on.